Hi, I'm Jennifer and I'm the designer of Porcelynne, and today we are actually going to be sewing the extra large adult Ashley Boyshort, and this one is for me. She is here for emotional support, as you can see. So if you look down at the table, so this is my completed Boyshort. This is the extra large. This is the one that fits me. And I do go over instructions in the first video I did on how to pick the right size for you. This one is sewn almost entirely with the Overlock machine. All the seams, all the finishings are done with the Overlock, and I stitched it in black so you can actually see what I did. Then I attached lingerie elastic around the waist and legs, and then went to my zigzag and then finished up with the top stitching with the zigzag all the way around. And so, enjoy the video. So the Ashley Boyshort for the adult size, we did not remove off any of the seam allowances like we do for the youth size. So the youth size is in a separate video, and I show that working entirely on the straight and zigzag machine. This Boyshort, for the most part, I'm going to be doing mostly on the Overlock and the Serger. I'm going to be doing my finishing stitches on my zigzag though. So, and there might be a stitch or two in the middle that I'll be working on. So, to get it started, I've got my Boyshort. I want to make sure that we're going to make sure that the curves line up, so I can stick a couple pins in it, make sure it's in the right place. And then remember, our seam allowances are 3/8 of an inch or 10 millimeters. So my stitch does 1/4 of an inch. So I need to cut off 1/4 of an inch. Now, if it's harder for you to do something like this, then go ahead and pre-trim it off like we discussed in the other video. So I'm going to get this started. I like to get my blade up as well so I can get it as close as possible so I know exactly what's getting cut off. And then I just start sewing. So make sure I cut off that 1/8 of an inch all the way on that curve. And make sure you take out your pin. Okay. I'm going to get my other side, and I don't think I lined these ones up, so get that pin here. Looks like these might have been a little bit choppy when I cut the crotch off on this one, and I have a feeling that, yeah, I did a terrible job cutting on this one. So I'm actually going to trust that this is a little on the extra, so I'm going to come into the inside. Okay, so again, line it up with my blade up. Cut that 1/8 off. And I just want to make sure that this curve looks good. So maybe I'm actually not even going to be cutting anything off on where it doesn't line up. So just on the other piece. And then when they more line up, come back to cutting off that 1/8 of an inch. And we all know cutting can be very difficult, so. Okay. Then following the directions. So we just did step 1. We're going to be doing step 2. So we're going to open it up so we got this together. And then we can sew the crotch pieces together. Now, alternatively, what you can do is you could actually sew the leg elastics on with this open. You'll just end up having a little bit of bulk down here at the crotch. Plus, it's a little bit hard because then you've got your lining part that's not going to be finished by the edge. So for this one, I'm just going to be sewing, just following my instructions. But no, there are other ways that you can do this. And because my cutting was less than desirable, it doesn't line up on one side. But I am lining up my seam in the middle. So you can see they're kind of crisscross right there. So now I'm going to just sew here. We also have that 3/8, so I'm going to again cut off that 1/8 of an inch. And try and get that So if you watch my other video with sewing with the straight and zigzag, this one's going a whole lot faster. So we've got that stitched together. Now we actually want to address the lining. So on the other one I did this, so on the youth size, you can speak up, honey. On the youth size I just did the fold and stitch. For this one I'm just going to do the overlock on the edge. This one, we moved the cameras a little bit so it's a little different. Okay, so for here, we don't really need to cut anything off, although there is seam allowance. So if you want to, it doesn't really make a big difference on the lining side. Just it would end up covering an extra 1/4 of an 1/8 of an inch. So I'm just going to go through and clean this top bit up. And this way it just leaves a cleaner finish on the inside. When I did my own clothing line, this is actually how I finished the linings. So it left a cleaner look. But if you're doing it for home use, you don't need to even finish it because it's not going to fray. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to set my pattern aside, and just for reference, looking here, I have it labeled back and front. The curved side is where the back is, so if you're not really sure and if you can't tell the difference, if you end up straightening it when you're cutting it, you can just put a pin. Where did I put my scissors? There we go. I don't like to deal with all this stuff, so I'm just gonna trim it off. So once we're here, and I like to deal with this, I know the in the Ashley for the youth sizes, I actually did the waist elastic before this, but we're going to just clean that up. Caught on my fingers. So this the shorter side to the crotch seam, that is the front. So I'm going to line this up. So we have our notches. Remember, I cut off my my little carrots, so I just did little snips. So I'm gonna put this up here. I'm gonna line that up to the edge over here. As you can see, I obviously did not cut out my Boyshort pattern very well because, as you can see, I've got a little gap over here from where that is. So I know. So my cutting is not always 100% accurate. So on the youth size, I sewed one side without basting it in, and then the second side I actually basted it in because it moved. I actually have more fabric to work with here, so I'm going to skip the basting stitch. I'm just going to pin it together on the edges here. Multiple pins, more pins I did than the other one. Okay, so I've got one side, got the other side, although you really only need to do one side at a time. But I'll go ahead and get pins in there. And this fabric is actually a little bit thicker than the one I did for Emily. So her fabric was a little bit slinkier, so this one's got a little bit more meat to it. So the pins actually hold. Probably haven't heard people calling fabric with meat. Okay, so we've got everything's kind of ready to go. We have, these are the leg elastics. Now what I did with the youth size is I actually pre-attached them together. And you can certainly do that if you want to. We can just kind of do a quick overlock on them together. Make sure you got so they're going to be straight, no extra pieces. That way it'll just kind of hold them together to make sure that you're getting it, keeping them together. Don't twist your elastic, make sure it's not twisted, otherwise it would not be fun. But you can also do this with a straight stitch, or a lot of times when I do this, I don't measure my elastics, and so I just kind of go with it, but I figure I'd follow the instructions that I have in my instruction manual. So you'd be like, well, but you didn't do it that way. I was like, I know, but sometimes it's easier to demonstrate something a little differently. But I've got plenty of other videos I did that shows the other way. So I didn't change the, I didn't cut anything off really on these. So I'm just going to take a quick look on the waistline to the elastic, and God, it looks huge. Did I measure that one right? Because my elastic really shouldn't be this much bigger. I will double check the measurements on there before I get this to go live, but really that should be the same size. So I'm going to cut off. Everything's folded, right? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to cut off that much. So I always kind of do a double check because, you know, sometimes us pattern makers, we do make mistakes. Don't do it on purpose. I'm going to double check that waist measurement. That looks better. Also going to check the leg. Maybe I cut the wrong... This one's off too, so I either cut the wrong one, because that's definitely too long, so I'm going to cut off that much. So I will double check this before I go live, but also double check your elastics because maybe you measured wrong. That's the waistline. I'll set that one over there. Here is the leg. So, oh, I'm chopping off a lot. I must have cut the wrong one. It's possible. But if not, I will double check my measurements regardless. So I'm going to do the elastics so they end up getting kind of encased. So it's soft enough that I can use it really anywhere, but I want to encase my elastic. So I'm going to start this. I can cut that off later. So right kind of at that crotch seam, so putting my seam maybe just a little bit past it so it's not too bulky. And this is going to be completely encased, so it doesn't really matter. And remember, our seam allowance is going to be 3/8, so we've got to pin it at least an 1/8 of an inch in, so we can then clip it off. So for this one, I'm going to, since I cut a little bit more off, I'm going to just find the middle. Stick that right on that fold so I have a point of reference so I can pin that in place. And then I like to also find the halves of the half. So here, that can go right there. And then on the other side. I flip the elastic over. I flip the elastic over. So it's doing a twist. Yep, it's twisted right here. Okay, and then once you get it pinned in, I would just kind of double check that your pins, the way you've pinned it, are all in the same direction. So like where I get to this point, this is going to cause me a problem because the pins are in two different directions. So flip that pin around. Okay, so now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to start at right about where the crotch is, and I don't like to stretch it a whole lot right in here. So this pin I am putting in the other direction just so I can hold it in place while I get this started. And so I'm going to come in at an angle so where I come onto the fabric is right about where that seam is. So I'm going to need to make sure that when I cut, I am only cutting the fabric and I am not cutting the elastic. You can't, I don't know if you can see really well. I probably should, I didn't bring enough of a black elastic home so you could actually see the black elastic. I am doing black threads so you can see the stitches. It's more of what I was concerned with. And so I'm kind of giving the fabric and the elastic a little tug. So it goes through the machine fine, cutting the fabric, not cutting the elastic. If you do not cut this, then the lining area is going to be way, way too fat, too wide for you. So if it's easier, because you're working with like a 1/4 inch elastic, then trim the seam allowance down to match the elastic and don't cut anything off. And this is entirely up to you. But I like to cut things off because I feel like I've got I get to clean up my cutting, because my cutting is horrendous. Okay, let's get that. Keep that in. I wanted to make sure I got to that lining bit in there. And then we are right about to where it came onto the fabric. Trim it up. There we go. The elastic is fully attached, and then I'm going to end up folding it on the inside and zigzagging it. Now alternatively, if you're really sensitive to, let's say, stitches and everything, you could even fold it outwards, you know, on the outside of the garment and make it more of a decorative stitch, and then you don't really have all those overlock stitches. Yes, you'll still have your zigzag stitch, so maybe I'll do that. I haven't decided yet. Just wanted to point that out. Okay, so I'm guessing this one is the leg. So again, I'm going to work from the inside. So pin the seam just past where the seam is. And the seam of the elastic just past the seam of, where is it? Find the end at some point. Okay, don't flip my elastic like I did last time. So there. So I pinned it at the halfway point. Come in here and pin it at the 1/4 point. So we've got it pinned in 3 places. And I'm going to try and make it so there's less pulling around the crotch area. Okay, so all my pins are facing the same direction. Okay, so I can come over here. Now I just got to move this pin out of the way because it's going to be slightly in the wrong spot. But I can pin it, flip that pin around so I can hold it in place. Oh, and I just got that pin got pulled out. do little bits at a time. You can see I take my time at this, and I know, you know, some people will be just zooming by, and I hate taking stitches out. Okay, so now I'm going right by that bulk. I'm trimming off the 1/8 of an inch. Sewing it to the next pin. This area I've got a little more gathering in. I'm almost done, yay! Back to the starting. It looks like I just clipped the overlock stitch there. Okay, now the last thing I gotta do is the waistline for the elastic attachment. And here we're going to find the back. Can't believe that was so big. Okay. Do the same thing. Find that seam just to the side. And then find the center of that elastic. Oh, I got a blue jay right out my window. And pinning that to the seam on the other side, and kind of make a conscious effort to pin it in the direction that I will be sewing it in. Okay, so we got that there. Find your halfway point again. Refind it on the other side. And this is a fairly big pattern, so you might even want to, for the larger sizes, even so you've got it quartered, actually go back in and pin it at 1/8. So now I'm going to start at my center back, kind of right before the seam. Okay, I've got my pin over here, so I'm going to where the pin is, and I'm just giving the elastic a pull, so I can then get it to go evenly through the machine. And then kind of giving that a pull again. Try not to stretch the fabric. If you have to stretch the fabric, that's fine. As long as you have a good elastic, it should pull it right back into shape and shouldn't stretch it out. The straight stitch, or the home machine, like the straight stitch and the zigzag, that you will actually likely pull. So you want to make sure you're not pulling it when you're sewing with those machines. Okay, got all my elastic attached. So, I mean, you can certainly leave that as is. Oh, I got a pin. Do I have a pin in here? Yep. I'm going to go over to my zigzag and we're going to finish this up so I can wear it. So at this point, the entire Boyshort has been sewn with the Overlock machine, the Serger, as some of you like to call it. Now, you certainly could have this as your design.
Sasha's
with
coming.
Emily, I'm recording, okay? You can certainly have this as your design with the elastic on the inside and a decorative overlock stitch. If you do that, make sure that you do trim down your seam allowances over here if this is going to be your finished edge. Otherwise, your the crotch seam this area could be a little bit too wide and it could be a little bulky. So I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to be folding it under, or rather, I always sew on the correct side. So I'm going to fold it under and do a zigzag. So I also like to start, just like I do my elastic, start and end my elastic in the back and at the crotch seam. I also like to do that with my zigzag, so that way the ugly stitches are hidden. So I did this sample already and recorded it, and I'm actually redoing it because my machine was skipping stitches really badly. And I switched the needle, and then it continued to skip stitches, and I really wasn't exactly sure why. And I think it has to do with the needles on this machine are not really the needles that are designed for this machine, because I stopped making those. So the machine's been slightly calibrated a little, it's been altered a little bit. So the really wide zigzag does not work well on here, but the narrow one does. So this one should look nice because I tested it. And so I'm just going to fold it under. I'm just going to hold it under and kind of roll it to the edge with my fingers as I'm going. So I don't stick a lot of pins in it, so I don't stab myself. But I always just kind of get about 2-3 inches set up and then just start sewing. And then I'm just going to do that for each of these. Honey, please stop doing that. It's making some weird noises. Sorry, my daughter is liking to be in the attention. There's a cat here because a cat was laying on top of these a minute ago. Honey, I will do, you can be in a video in a minute, okay? So my daughter wants to be at the center of attention, of course. And she wants to be doing the videos, but she's not in the videos. So we're going to refilm the intro after this, so she will be saying her hello, which you have already seen at this point. And so I am giving my fabric a little tug. I probably should have done that right here. The stitches got a little close together because there's kind of a bulky bit right there, and they just got a little bit stuck together. Other than that, the zigzag looks really nice on this one. Hopefully no skip stitches. I just switched the needle. Come back to that back seam. Now there's hold on. Yes, all the way around. So there's no reason to do a back stitch here. All we're going to do is we're going to stitch over where we started, pretty much right back to that seam. So kind of reinforces it for you. Okay, so my waist stitch is done. And that looks pretty nice.
Aren't you gonna put elastic on it?
It is elastic, honey. There's elastic. I sewed the elastic to it. Weren't you here when I was doing that? Maybe you weren't. Okay, so then I'm starting at the crotch seam, the least likely seam to be seen. So if it since it's pretty bulky right here, could end up skipping a little bit. Let's see. And so I am tugging this a little bit because I had to pull the elastic because I wanted it to hug the leg a little bit more than the waist. And then again, I just kind of readjust a couple inches, get it straight, try and pull it so the fabric is pretty good. And see, again, I'm pulling the fabric here. Well, it just takes practice. Your home machine won't sew this fast. I love my industrial zigzag here. I love it so much that I actually gave my home machine to my daughter. The one that my grandmother taught me how to sew on. Well, not my mom. Whoever taught me how to sew on it.
Thank you for giving
Okay,
it to
honey,
me.
careful. You're welcome. I need you to use it though. Not just sitting there and collect dust. Okay, then the last side. And then this is nearly done. And of course, if you used a matching thread, it won't be as visible, but it kind of looks nice with the black stitching on here. I did this so you can see it. Pull my fabric. Cat hair all over this thing. There we go. Looks like we are done. Let me clip these threads. Just got my finger stuck in the scissors. Okay. So here we go. My Ashley Boyshort is completed. Okay, this is the front. And you see it kind of looks like it's almost like little shorts in the back, so it hugs the butt a little bit right in here. And then so it's a little bit more coverage in the back. There you go.